Hey guys, it's Deena, your mindset evolutionary here at FlyNubianQueen.com, the network for melanated women just like you and me. Welcome everybody. I'm gonna, do a little promotion while I wait for some of you guys to get in here. Oh, I see the numbers going up. Welcome, welcome. So if you haven't already, please go to FlyNubianMoney.com to get your money up. And if you, as you're coming in, I would love for you guys to hit the thumbs up, to like, subscribe, and share this video. Tonight we are going to discuss the question, do Black women lack clear, healthy boundaries in our society? And I have a lot to cover tonight, so I am not going to be as interactive as I usually am. Hey, greetings, Michelle McWeather. But I will try to pause at certain points and get some of your reactions, your questions, etc. So let's just jump right in. So you guys know me, I love to get on the same page with the terminology. So let's start off with, okay, the question is, do Black women lack clear, healthy boundaries in society? What are some of the causes? How do we build healthy boundaries and retrain society on how to treat us? So what is a boundary? Emily Dawn says, nope, you can't blanket statement anyone like that. Black women are amazing, empowered, beautiful, sexy, and spiritual survivors. That's right. Okay, I love where you're going with that, Emily Dawn. And let me just say hello to my brilliantly beautiful, gifted beings, all the Black queens who are in here tonight. It looks like we have a good amount of people, and I'm so glad that you guys are tuning in for this subject. So again, let's jump right in. What is a boundary? Okay. Just so we can get on the same page, we're going to define it through Google. A boundary is a noun, and it is a line that marks the limits of an area, a dividing line. So, for example, the eastern boundary of a wilderness. Similar words would be borders, frontiers, borderline, a borderline. So say, for example, of a country, right? We know that they talk quite a bit about people coming across the border who are illegals, etc. It could be a dividing line. It could be a partition. Remember that song by Beyonce with the partition, where she's putting the partition up, creating a boundary for all the freaky stuff that was going to happen with her and Jay-Z, while the driver was like, you know, the partition was dividing them so that it couldn't be seen or heard, and it was just them. Also, the second definition is a limit of a subject or sphere of activity. So, for example, a community without class or political boundaries. That's an interesting example. So some of the similar things would be a dividing line, a divide, a division, a borderline is again thrown in there. So we understand that a boundary is a limit that marks the limits, a line that marks the limits of an area, or a limit of a subject or sphere of activity. So let's take it a little deeper and say, what is a personal boundary? So we're going to talk about it from the individual as well as the community perspective. Personal boundaries are guidelines, rules, or limits that a person creates to identify reasonable, safe, and permissible ways for others to behave towards them, and how they will respond when someone passes those limits. And again, this is from Google. So if we think about it on a community level, have we set a clear, healthy boundary, guidelines, borderline, division, rules, or limits? Have we as a community created those things that identify what is reasonable for us as Black women to accept, what is safe for us as Black women to accept, and permissible ways for the bigger society, and even within the society, our men, our children, our friends, our family members, ways for them to behave towards us? Have we set up clear boundaries? I definitely want to hear what you ladies think, and gentlemen who are here. And have we set clear identifying lines and guidelines on how they will respond, how we will respond when someone passes those limits? Okay, so I want us to think about this question. I'm not sure that we're going to answer the question. I would love to hear some feedback from everyone out there. But what I want to do is get us thinking about this. You know, I love to challenge us to think about how we as Black women in the larger Black community and also in the larger society, how we can heal, how we can become more healthy in our interactions with ourselves, how we can build our self-love, our self-respect, our self-confidence, and stand on that foundation. And we've been talking about those things over the past couple of weeks. And now we're getting into how do we set guidelines and clear, healthy guidelines and clear boundaries for how we interact with ourselves, our friends, our family members, our men, our community, and ultimately our society out here in the world. Now, my personal take on this is that our boundaries have been violated as a community in a lot of different ways over the past few centuries since our ancestors came over here in chains. First of all, being taken away from, your homeland, that was a clear violation. That was a clear breach of boundary. And I think ever since then, there may it's arguable that we as women, as Black women, have not been able to establish, for the most part as a collective, a clear set of healthy guidelines and boundaries for the larger community, as well as some of those boundaries have been distorted or breached by people in our community, and definitely by the larger society. So I want us to get into that. I want us to think about, what can we do? How can we first identify what is a healthy boundary and what is an unhealthy boundary? And what can we do about that in our larger society? And as always, my take on it, and also a lot of psychologists' takes on it, is that it starts with the individual. It starts with I, me, myself, and I, you, yourself. And then it goes out from there. So, Michael Ellington said, is that Chili from TLC? No, this is Deena Jacobs live, my darling. So I hope that answers your question. So let's get into this a little deeper. Okay, so just to be clear, I'm going to use the word interact. So I want to make sure we are on the same page about what interact means. Act in such a way as to have effect on another, or act reciprocally. So reciprocally is back and forth between two people. So to have an engagement back and forth. So when I'm saying how the society interacts with us, how we interact with the larger society, that's what I'm talking about, how we have an effect on them and how they have an effect on us through interaction. So let's get into this a little deeper. Let's look at the different types of boundaries. All right. So here's a chart, a visual. So we have here, we have healthy boundaries. So if you look at that really closely, you can see that it's a dotted line that goes around and it covers the entire person. But it is dotted because there are opportunities during a healthy boundary where you can let people in. You can let people in, you can let new ideas in, you can let new ways of being in, you can listen empathically, you can listen from a place where you are comfortable on your foundation, you're confident, and you're standing in self-love, and you don't have to become attached or clingy to whatever that person is expressing to you or displaying, or whatever the situation may be. You are doing self-checks to make sure that you're good while you're allowing yourself to get to know this person, or to assist them, or simply just to be present in that moment for them. Also, you know how to say yes when things are for you, when you feel comfortable, when you're willing to give and you have something to give. And you also know how to say no when you don't have anything to give, or you need to take care of yourself, and that's the priority. And so those are the boundaries. Let's look at that really good. Okay, you see the healthy boundary. Now next to that is an unhealthy boundary. So you see there's a lot of like big gaping holes there. There's a little bit of protection, but this particular individual is leaving themselves very vulnerable in a lot of instances, right? So as a community, can we identify where maybe sometimes we're less standing here and more standing here, where things are permeating into our community that are killing our men, killing our women? They're becoming mind viruses. Economically, we could look at, you know, maybe this particular situation might be present in our community where we're allowing people to come in and take from us economically, and there's all these gaping holes, these areas that are breached. If you think about a castle or a fort or something like that, I mean, the war is lost already with this type of a fort, because all the enemies, they're just going to come through every which way, right? And then we look at other types of unhealthy boundaries. So for example, we have loose or porous boundaries. So there are boundaries all around. There's not huge gaping holes in this particular example, but there's still quite a bit of areas that are unprotected. And this person or this community, while they think that they have, you know, a certain amount of boundaries in place, the reality of the situation is there's all these areas that can be breached. Like they might say, okay, I don't want that. I don't want to do that. But with just a little pushback, the whole thing can collapse. You see what I'm saying? And then we have another form of unhealthy boundary, which is a rigid boundary. And that's when you have a huge wall up and you don't let anything in. And so that can be very isolating. That can cause a lot of all of these can kind of contribute to a certain level of mental illness, but this can cause people to be very lonely, isolated. It also doesn't help for community building. It doesn't help for building financially. It doesn't help for building a society. So you don't want to necessarily have a big fortress up either. You don't want to have big walls, thick walls with barbed wire all over them either. So you want to try to have something a little bit more like this, where the perimeter is protected. It's like a fence. You can open the fence when you want, and you can close the fence to keep things out when you want and lock it, right? So that's where we are with the types of boundaries. So we're going to be, of course, tapping into some experts, and one of the people that I'm going to tap into is Lisa Nichols tonight. And she has a quote that I want to share with you guys. It says, "We train people how to treat us." So let's listen to Miss Lisa Nichols talk a little bit about that. Now, I did put the links up if you guys want to access this later, or now you want to watch these videos and kind of learn about how she and some of the other people that I tap into tonight help to create healthy boundaries, how they rebuild their boundaries. And we want to think about this individually, which is most important. And also we want to think about this as a community of women. How have we as Black women allowed people to breach our boundaries? And what are we going to do about it? How can we stop it? And how can we move forward and retrain people how to treat us? Let's listen to a word from Lisa Nichols.
We train people how to treat us. Like, they're looking at what we're saying yes to and what we're co-signing on. And if we're the yes woman or the yes man all the time, then one, our yes isn't as valuable because everyone automatically expects it because we give it away all the time. And two, they're going to keep asking because they know they're going to get yes. And if you're a producer and deliverer, you're the one I'm going to come to all the time because you're a producer and deliverer. You're going to get the job done, even to the detriment of your own joy, even to the detriment of your own happiness. But again, you train people how to treat you. But the good news about training someone is that they can be retrained.
So I definitely hope that you guys heard what she said there. We train people how to treat us. So as a society, of women, of Black women, as a community of Black women, how have we trained the larger society to treat us? Have we trained them to respect us? Have we trained them to honor and value who we are as individuals, our creativity? Have we trained them to give us space when needed? Have we trained them to back off and allow us to do us, so to speak, and take control of our own families and our communities? Do we have control over our own creative byproducts or products that we put out, such as our style, our fashion, our way of being, our slang? Do we allow the larger society to come in and take advantage of us? Are we the people, or have we been the people in the past? Absolutely. During slavery, there were no boundaries because we were considered to be property. So whenever there was a need or anything was going on within the plantation, et cetera, we had to be on call. Didn't matter if we were tired. It didn't matter if our children were sick. It didn't matter if we needed some mental space, some time to just breathe. There was no time to breathe. So it's like a legacy. It's like a history that I think some of us in our community have gotten kind of comfortable with, that we don't have this enclosed, healthy boundary to say sometimes to the larger society, no. We don't feel comfortable in certain situations to be able to say no. An example I can think of, and this again is from my perspective, is Cardi B. Some people have accused her of cultural appropriation. And she's not the only one. This is just me bringing an example to you guys that is very current and hopefully relevant. Cultural appropriation, in my opinion, can be a form of the larger society breaching our boundaries. And due to us having porous, I would say maybe porous or somewhat limited or non-existent boundaries, we've allowed this and we've given no pushback, and we have not been able to successfully say, boom, no, this is not acceptable. We will not support artists who appropriate our culture without giving back. We do not support that. Now, there are some times where we will give pushback, absolutely. But I'm using that as an example for when she first broke onto the scene, and, you know, she's doing this, she's doing that, she's using the N-word, et cetera, et cetera. But then on the back end, she's, you know, from what I understand, calling Black women or referring to a Black woman as cockroaches. She's saying she's not Black, she's using the N-word, all these things, and pretty much disrespecting. Some people would say she's disrespecting us as Black women in the community. So how do we allow, or why do we allow something like that to take place? It's because we have not reinforced our boundaries in a way that is healthy to let people such as her or others know that it is inappropriate and unwelcomed behavior, and it's not acceptable. So let's get into how we can, you know, identify what might be an unhealthy boundary. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about this book that I came across on Amazon, and it's called Boundaries: When to Say Yes, How to Say No to Take Control of Your Life. Now, I'm going to talk about broader context ideas for the community, for us as a community of Black women. But I also want you to be thinking about your personal, individual situations, because individuals make up the broader community. And until we get our boundaries in place in a healthy way as individuals, and this goes for me too. This is something that I'm personally working on right now with my therapist. What are my boundaries, and how have they been breached during childhood, and how have I continued to allow that to happen into adulthood, and why I am unable to fulfill certain things that I want, where there are certain failures that are repeating over and over again. And what I was able to identify with my therapist is that there were some breaches of my boundaries where I did not know that I could say no, that it was okay to tell someone, no, I do not want that. I do not like that, and stand firm within it. So having clear boundaries, according to this book written by Henry Cloud and John Townsend in April of 1992, having clear boundaries is essential to a healthy, balanced lifestyle. So in order for us to have a healthy community, and that is what we're working towards, right, ladies and gentlemen? We want to work towards having a healthy community and balanced community and live a healthy, balanced lifestyle within our community. So having clear boundaries is essential to a healthy, balanced lifestyle. A boundary is a personal property line. So our personal property lines were violated in slavery. From the first day that our people were enslaved, that was a personal property line that was crossed. A boundary is a personal property line that marks those things for which we are responsible. Our families, we're responsible for our families, we're responsible for ourselves, and those personal property lines for ourselves as Black women and our families, our children, our offspring, our husband, were constantly being breached, stepped over, violated, right? So the things that we felt responsible for, all of a sudden we had no responsibility for anymore because someone else had gone in and taken over our time, our mental space, our emotional space, because we had to tend to other people's children before we could even tend to our own, right? And so maybe this has created a legacy in our community of having unhealthy boundaries to where some mothers are not necessarily doing it the same exact way that it was happening in slavery. But think about this, and you guys can tell me if you think I'm way off or not. But I thought about this, and the example that came to mind is a single mom, or maybe a single dad, or even if it's the mom and the dad. But again, you know, at Fly Nubian Queen, we're focused in on Black women. So say if you're a mom and you're out all day working for a corporation, some people call it the corporate plantation, right? And 9 times out of 10, there are white people running this, right? And you're giving all your time, all your capital, all your emotional capital, and your energy, your creative spirit, your intelligence, everything you're giving to this corporation. And then when you come home at night, there's nothing left for your kids or your husband. That's an example of having weak boundaries. Weak boundaries, limited or non-existent boundaries, or maybe loose or porous. So maybe you try to balance it out to a certain point, but your boss is always asking you to stay late. You're taking on, and this is a thing that I've seen in the corporate world as well, where Black men and Black women will work twice as hard. There's this myth that exists that says that we have to work twice as hard to prove ourselves to them. Why is that? That is having an unhealthy boundary. We should be working hard, or working smart is what I prefer. In my own world, I like to work smart. But I would also offer that to you, that having a healthy boundary is about working smart for yourself. How is you working hard and staying late and working twice as hard to prove yourself to some corporate CEO on the corporate plantation? How is that helping you? It's burning you out. It's making you angry. It's making you bitter. And it's causing a rift in your family between you, your loved ones, your children, your husband. That means that you have to set up better boundaries, because when you come home, now you have nothing left to give. And obviously, if you have nothing to give to your family and they see that, then they're not going to have anything to give to you, or you're going to create an unhealthy situation where you're trying to draw energy from you're sucking energy. It's not reciprocal. It's not a give or take. It's you drawing and sucking energy from your children, making your children your best friend, or making them your quote unquote slaves, so to speak, because they're in the house doing everything like cooking, cleaning, you know, rubbing mommy's feet, rubbing her back, and all this kind of stuff. And again, I'm saying there's a balance to these things, right? Now, if they're doing this as a part of their chores, etc., it makes sense. But if you are literally coming home with nothing, exhausted, and then expecting your children to help raise the younger children, your older children to raise the younger children, and things like that, that is breaching their boundaries and teaching them unhealthy patterns of codependency. So these are just ideas to marinate on. So we're going to go back to boundaries, when to say yes and when to say no. In other words, boundaries define who we are and who we are not. So are we still those slaves? Do we still hold some of that inside of ourselves when we are not setting healthy boundaries and taking time to love ourselves and taking time to care for ourselves and knowing when to say no? When to say no is one of the most important things that you can do. Let's get into this a little bit more. Boundaries impact all areas of our lives. Physical boundaries help us determine who may touch us and under what circumstances. We get into this discussion about hair, and then we put up this what I consider sometimes to be a very rigid wall, because we had instances, potentially we had instances in the past where we were being touched without anyone's permission. Right? They're touching our hair, they're touching our skin, they're touching our bodies, and we didn't like that. So we put up this rigid wall. No one can ask about our hair. No one can touch us. However, maybe it's a little too rigid. I'm not saying that you're just letting people touch you, but if someone has a question about your hairstyle, or they have a question about how you're wearing your hair, or they are genuinely curious, it doesn't always have to be, boom, this wall of, I know she didn't ask me. I know she didn't. It can be more like, you know what? Maybe I feel like explaining to her how I do my hair, or maybe I don't. It's up to you. But it doesn't have to be a rigid, angry, you know, type of thing. And that, again, this is just an example, ladies. And I'll take a quick moment here to say thank you so much, guys, for joining me, Deena Jacobs here, your Mindset Evolutionary, every Sunday night at 7 p.m. on flynubianqueen.com, at Facebook, and on YouTube, the replay on YouTube. Thank you guys for being here. If you haven't already, please subscribe, please like, please share. Give us the thumbs up on this topic. I'm going to jump in and try to take a couple of comments here. And see what you ladies think about healthy boundaries. Do Black women lack clear, healthy boundaries in society? And what can we do about it? How do we identify it? And what can we do about it so that we can start to love ourselves more, give ourselves more self-care, and have a healthier relationship within our communities, with ourselves, our children, our men, and ultimately the greater society and world? How do we, as Black women, as these brilliantly beautiful, gifted beings that we are, reclaim our throne? And part of reclaiming our throne is setting up healthy boundaries. Does that make sense, ladies and gentlemen? I hope it does. I know it does to you. So emotional boundaries help us deal with our own emotions and disengage from the harmful. So again, there's so many different things going on in society. Somebody said the word nigga, somebody got shot, somebody hugged somebody in a courtroom, somebody, you know, people were standing in line for Popeye's chicken. If you don't have healthy emotional boundaries, you will be letting all these different things affect you and get you feeling some kind of way every time something happens. If you have healthy emotional boundaries, you can then decide from a place of confidence and self-love and care which things need to be addressed as serious and which things can be ignored and not given energy to, right? So, and then you can have those in-between spaces where you're like, okay, this is a concern, but it doesn't need to be given a lot of emotion. It just needs to be looked at from a place of, what can be done different? How does this serve us as a community? How does this hurt us as a community? Let's weigh it out from a place of confidence, calm, peace, and focused determination. That is where you start to erect healthy boundaries, and you start to patch up these holes, right? And you start to make it more comfortable in how we are honoring ourselves as individual women and as women in our Black community here in America. So spiritually, boundaries help us to distinguish God's will from our own and give us renewed awe of our Creator. Often Christians focus so much on being loving and unselfish that they forget their own limits and limitations. When confronted with their lack of boundaries, they ask, can I set limits and still be a loving person? Can we? I would say yes. What are legitimate boundaries? As individuals, only you know what your legitimate boundaries are. Only I know what my legitimate boundaries are. And everybody's boundaries are a little bit different. Some people are more givers and enjoy giving. And some people are more receivers and enjoy receiving. And when those two people get together in a balanced and healthy way, it's bliss, right? But when you get a person who just drains and takes, and you get a person who gives of themselves unwillingly and doesn't really enjoy giving past a certain point, that's when it becomes unhealthy. And I feel like as a community, as Black women, we have given so much of ourselves throughout history to the point where we're just used to giving. We're used to it to a point where it's almost on autopilot. And what I'm saying to you today, ladies, is let's do a self-check and let's check this situation and say enough. No, thank you. We can say it politely. No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to be available for that. I'm not going to be able to stay for that meeting. I'm not going to allow this guy to take credit for things that I put together. I'm not going to work twice as hard to prove that I'm good enough. I know that I'm good enough. I'm going to do what's required to demonstrate that I'm good at what I do, but I'm not going to do more than that. And I'm not going to allow myself to have to be worried or have a lot of anxiety about being a Black woman in the workplace just because of, the larger society's BS, their racism, their willingness to want to take from us, because that is the history of how things have been. This is the time when we as women, as individuals, it starts with us, can start to say, no, thank you. I don't think so. No, I'm not interested in that. We can say it with a smile. We don't have to be angry, because that is violating an emotional boundary. That is an overreaction when you have loose or weak boundaries and someone has breached the boundary and now you're like scared and you're kind of upset and you're like, what are you doing? Get away from me. No, hell no, I ain't doing that. You don't have to go there, ladies. When you are confident and you're standing in your self-confidence and your self-love and you're taking care of yourself and you're honoring who you are as queens, you can simply say, you know what, Bob? No, thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. I'm going to go home now and spend some time with my family. I'll see you tomorrow, bright and early. Do you feel what I'm saying? That's what this is about. And on a more personal level, this is about you setting boundaries for your family, you setting boundaries for your friendships. And also you have to set boundaries, most importantly, inside yourself. No negative self-talk as much as possible. Check yourself when you catch yourself saying stuff like, I'm a double negative, I'm Black and a woman. No more of that. That is breaching a boundary of self-love that you should have instilled within yourself. You tell yourself, I am fulfilled in every area of my life. I'm a brilliantly beautiful, gifted being. I am a Black woman, and I deserve the best that life has to offer, and I will settle for nothing less. So no thank you for your scraps. Either you come to me and you meet my standards of what I'm willing to accept, or thank you, no thank you, keep it moving along. Once we do that as individuals, and then we spread that out into the larger community, and then we spread that out into the larger society, then we will get the respect that we as Black women are long overdue. Let's get deeper in here. I might have to do a part 2 on this because it's already 7:36, and I want to say thank you so much for joining me, Deena Jacobs, your Mindset Evolutionary, here live every Sunday night at 7 p.m. on flynubianqueen.com, the network for melanated women just like you and me. I love you all so much for being here. And I'm so happy that you are allowing me to share this information with you, and you're with me on this journey. Thank you so much. So let's get a little deeper in here. So these guys are asking this question in this book. We're still with this book. What if someone is upset or hurt by my boundaries? Now, we know that these people in a larger society are used to being able to use us. We know that, right? They imitate everything we do. They tan, they get injections, they get enhancements, they borrow, steal our styles, appropriate our culture, our slang. So when we start to say, no, I'm sorry, no, I don't think so. When we start to, again, let them know that the use of the word nigga is not cool under any circumstances. But first, in order to instill that, we have to set that boundary within our own community and within ourselves to say how we are going to speak to and about ourselves. Because how are we going to be enforcing boundaries with the larger society if we're in our own community and inside of our own minds and bodies and spirits feeling like a bunch of worthless niggas? As Dr. Cheryl Tuwete Grills, and I always reference her, said, the sickness, the illness of the lie of Black inferiority. What we have to do is we have to expel that lie outside of our boundary and never allow that to breach our boundary ever, ever again. That spirit of energy of Black inferiority is no longer allowed inside this sphere, this personal sphere, this familial sphere, this community sphere. Boom, it's not allowed here. So we have to set that boundary, and we have to start checking ourselves and then gently and lovingly checking each other. And that's what I'm here to help us do. We have to check each other and say, ladies, do we lack clear, healthy boundaries in our society? So how do I answer someone who wants my time, love, energy, or money? Aren't boundaries selfish? No, but let the larger society tell it. When Black people try to set boundaries, when we say, excuse me, no, that's not going to work here. I'm sorry. No, thank you. We don't want that in our community. We don't want another liquor store in our community. We don't want another weed shop in our community. Okay, no, we're not going to accept this slum lord situation that you have going on here. This is unacceptable. You can say it in a nice, peaceful way and let them know the answer is no. Are they going to be upset? Is it selfish? It's not selfish in a negative way. It's selfish in a self-care way. It's selfish in a way of having a certain level of standards and sticking to it. It is, ladies, it is absolutely your God-given right to set your standards as high as you feel comfortable having them. Let me say that again. Ladies, Black women, queens, my brilliant, beautiful, gifted beings that you are, it is absolutely within your God-given right to set your standards as absolutely high as you feel comfortable with, as you want them, and do not allow anyone, most importantly, yourself. Do not allow negative self-talk, training, conditioning to tell you that you deserve less or have to lower your standards for any reason. And I'm talking about health. I'm talking about wealth. I'm talking about love. I'm talking about family. I'm talking about self-development. I'm talking about self-care. I'm talking about your visions and your dreams for the future. That is what helps to fortify your boundaries, is your standards and your self-worth. So I'm going to stop preaching for a minute and get a little bit deeper in here, right? How to create healthy boundaries, right? Now let's get into 12 signs that someone is lacking. How do you know if you're lacking healthy boundaries, right? And again, I'm going on this journey with you. I'm in therapy right now. I'm talking to my therapist, and she's helping me figure these things out, giving me homework, and I'm bringing it to you. So if you find that you identify with a number of these things on this list, please, by all means, do what you can to take care of yourself. Go see a therapist. Go to a group therapy. Go online. Watch videos. Read books. Meditate. Pray. Do what you need to do to take care of you. That is going to be the foundation upon which you build and reinforce healthy boundaries. 12 signs you lack boundaries. Okay, and this comes from harleytherapy.co.uk. I did put the link in there so you can go in and read in detail, but I'm going to speed through these kind of quickly due to time, right? So the number one thing is, the first sign is if you have difficult or dramatic relationships. Now, not all of us, because we're not a monolith, but we definitely know that we have been categorized as ratchet, as hood rats, because we see a lot of difficult relationships portrayed in reality TV shows. Even when you look like I think it was a week or two ago, I talked about the stereotype of the angry Black woman. Every interaction she had is drama, is difficult, right? If you are feeding that into your mind by watching these shows, listening to this music, or having encouraging these type of interactions within your personal life, where you're all the time, or allowing others to all the time, that is a sign that you're lacking healthy boundaries, because you're attracted to that. Therefore, you're attracting that situation. Worst case scenario, when you are always having difficult and dramatic relationships, worst case scenario, according to this list, is that you end up on the receiving end of mental, emotional, and at the very bottom, physical and sexual abuse. When your body's not your own. Someone's hitting you, pushing you, shoving you, smacking you, choking you, having sex with you, touching your body. Now think about this, ladies. This goes back to the plantation. We have to rid ourselves of that and erect healthy boundaries. We have to lay this foundation of self-love and set our standards and be okay with where our standards are, right? And be okay with saying no. No, thank you. That's not for me. Number 2, indecisive. Are you indecisive? Especially when it comes to things that are pertaining to you as an individual. Are you having a hard time making decisions about who you are, why you are, what you are, where you are? Do you know who you are? If you can't quite figure those things out, it's probably because people have imposed their ideas, their view of who you are. And I would say as a community, we definitely have some bipolarism about who we are as a people. right? 1 minute, people are mad because someone is very relevant, example, hair. 1 minute, people are upset. Oh, somebody's got extensions or a wig. Next minute, well, we should be able to wear our hair however we want. No one can tell us how we can wear our hair. But then it's like, well, now we want natural hair. We should only ever wear natural hair because if you don't wear natural hair, then you don't love yourself. Okay, well, I don't know, but I think braids are kind of ghetto. Well, I like braids, and it's just like all this back and forth. Now, some of this is just people having opinions, right? But how much of it is coming from the larger society? The subliminal messages that they're sending to us that Black women can only ever be one way. You're not Black if you wear your hair like this. You're not Black if you dress like this. You're not Black if you sound like this. You're not Black if you whatever, right? How much of that is coming from us and how much of that is coming from them? We got to get our boundaries in place so we can figure that out. Who are we as Black women? We decide that as individuals, and then we come together as a community of women and decide who we are later for what they're talking about in the greater society. We should never allow our own self-image and who we are as individuals to be defined outside of who we are as an individual and as a collective and a community of women. We should never allow the greater society that we know does not have our best interests at heart to define who we are as women. We're not mammies. We're not angry Black women. We're not Jezebels. Do we have some elements of those things? Absolutely. We're human beings. We're not perfect. But we do not have to claim ratchetness the way that I see some of us doing, just simply because the larger society, are you really comfortable being ratchet? Or is that something that's been put upon you and you're just trying to own it? You're just really trying to own it because you feel your boundaries aren't in place and you just feel like it's easier to just own being a ratchet hoe and just own being ghetto because it's just easier so you don't have to deal with the pushback of people not thinking you're Black enough. Why are Black men out here claiming themselves to be niggas? Is that a lack of boundaries? Because there was a point in time when being called a nigga was disgraceful. It was something that was said to hurt us. So would that be an example of a boundary that has been breached? That we are no longer even trying to keep those words and images out of our minds, out of our spirits, out of our communities. Now we're embracing them wholeheartedly because we have no boundaries or we have very weak boundaries. Again, these are things to think about, and it starts with us as individuals. If I love myself, do I limit myself? Now, I'm not talking about setting healthy limitations, but I'm saying, do I allow others to limit me? Do I limit myself according to others? Let's keep going. Number 3, people pleasers. Trying to make sure that white people or the larger society is okay with us. Trying to make sure that mama and daddy and the rest of the Black community approves of us. There's all kinds of Black people, and we need to make space for the nerds or the blurs as they're called. We need to make space for the athletes. We need to make space for, everybody in the community that makes up our community. There's so many different types of people, and we don't have to just have, the Hoteps over there, these people over there. Let's open it up and make space for the different types of Black people and stop questioning their Blackness simply because they don't fit into the stereotypes that are given to us by the larger society. They don't have our interest in mind. They're takers. And that's something we need to remember as we stand firm on our foundation of self-love, self-care, and our standards so we can reinforce our boundaries. 4, guilt and anxiety. Now gets into a more personal thing. Do you have guilt and anxiety when dealing with your family members, dealing with, loved ones, if you're not able to be there for them? Do you have guilt and anxiety with your job? Feeling like if you don't produce for your boss at a higher level than everybody else because you're that Black woman that they think is a diversity hire or whatever like that, right? They had a scenario like that on Mixed-ish. I don't know if you guys saw it, where she was able to enjoy some nepotism and got a job at her husband's father or her father-in-law's law firm. And those white boys immediately started picking on her about the fact that she was a diversity hire. And instead of her reinforcing her boundaries to say, I'm here because I'm the best at what I do, she starts working harder and she doesn't say anything or speak up. She lets them intimidate her and breach her boundaries to diminish who she is as a brilliant lawyer. Not a Black woman per se, but they try to use that against her. That's why we have to stand confidently in who we are, so that they can never breach that boundary. Nothing they can say, yeah, okay, I'm here on nepotism. Y'all been doing that for generations. My turn. You feel what I'm saying? That's kind of how we have to be about it. And that way you stand confidently and you say, no, thank you. I'm not going to receive that negative energy that you're putting on me to make me feel like I don't deserve to be here. I belong here. I earned it. I'm worth it. Deal with it. That type of thing, okay? Get rid of the guilt and anxiety that's haunting you about whatever it is. Usually guilt and anxiety is paired with feelings of inferiority, and we have to let that go. Again, thank you so much for joining me, Deena Jacobs Live, your Mindset Evolutionary, here every Sunday night, 7 p.m. on flynubianqueen.com on Facebook and YouTube. Please follow us on Instagram. Please like, share, subscribe if you haven't already. Please give us a thumbs up if you're enjoying this. I hope you are. I'm trying to get through this. We're at the end of the hour already, so I'm thinking I may have to extend this into a part 2 next week, because I want us to get into the self-check guidelines and also how to create healthy boundaries. You guys know that I never ever bring you an issue without also bringing you solutions, because that is the only way that we are going to free ourselves from mental slavery and thoughts of Black inferiority. The only way we can heal those things is by identifying the problems and then having ways to get past those problems, to solve the problems. So I promise next week, I will bring you the part 2 to this with the solution. So I'm going to get through the rest of this. Number 5, always tired. I hear so many of my friends, my sister girls, I am exhausted, girl. I am so tired. I got so much to do. I got this. I got to go over here. I got to do that. And then we take this thing on where we have to do it all. Strong Black woman syndrome, right? Superwoman syndrome, right? That is us not having strong boundaries. That is us having weak boundaries. You should be able to say, you know what? I'm exhausted. I need to take some time for me. I'm sorry. I can't help out at the church this weekend. I'm sorry. No, I can't watch your kids. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to stay late today at work. I'm not going to be able to pick up that second shift. No, I'm sorry. You can't borrow any money from me. No, I'm sorry. I can't do your hair this time, girl. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to listen to, not even I'm sorry. I hate I'm sorry. No, girl. I'm not going to be able to listen to another story about your deadbeat baby daddy. No, girl, I'm sorry. I can't get involved in you and your other friends' drama. Okay? TMI, that's number 6, oversharing. Some of us can get into oversharing and telling our whole life story and telling every detail of our relationship situation, or every detail of our financial situation, or every thought that's in our head. I've been guilty of that. I'm not even sitting here and act like I'm above all this stuff. I have definitely ticked off some of the things on this list, and that's why I am doing something about it. Oversharing. It's nothing wrong with sharing a little bit of yourself with people that you meet here and there, but you don't want to start telling about all the bad things that have happened to you and how much you got going on. If you're at that point where you're feeling like you have no one to talk to and you're telling all this stuff to a stranger, that is the time you need to go and hire a therapist, because it's obvious and clear that you have things inside that you need to get out. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you want to do it in a situation where they're going to help you process what's going on and get yourself out of the situation. Just simply telling those things to a stranger or dumping it all on your friends and family members is too much, and it's not helpful to, most importantly, it's not helpful to you. It's not helpful to you, sister. Telling people all your business, because it doesn't reflect well on you. You want to go somewhere where someone is a professional who can help you process everything that's going on, because that is your cry for help. When you have TMI, when you're telling about your whole sex life all over social media and Instagram, that means that someone has violated your boundaries and you don't know how to deal with it. So everything is, because somebody got in here, now everything is spilling out of the holes. Do you see what I'm saying? Somebody poked a hole in your situation and now it's like, go handle that. Take care of yourself. Love yourself enough to recognize that as a sign of having unhealthy boundaries due to someone violating your boundaries. And you need to forgive yourself and heal from that. Number 7, victim mentality. That goes right into what I was just talking about. Feeling like as a community of people, we're just victims. They shooting us in the street. You know, they beating us down. You know, they taking money out of the community. It is clear that these things do happen, but do we have to own it in the way that we do sometimes? Getting so angry and upset, just getting all over social media and da-da-da-da-da. How does that help us? I do believe in raising awareness and bringing things to the people. But if you're sitting in it and stewing in it and feeling that negative energy and being afraid to walk the streets or do anything, we need to do something about that as a community. How can we reinforce our boundaries so that we are no longer being victimized? Maybe we don't let everybody into our community. Maybe we don't allow everyone to open up businesses in our community. Therefore, they can't mistreat us. If we don't allow them into our community and we have stronger boundaries, thinking back to the Black Panthers and how they reinforced boundaries in the community with open carry laws and things of that nature. These are things to think about. How do we get out of the victim vibrational energy, the victim mentality, feeling overlooked, blamed, shamed, put upon? You know they ain't gonna never let us do nothing because we Black, and you know we ain't never gonna get that reparations check because we Black. Are we just victims? Have we been victimized? Yes, our boundaries have been breached. Now, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to set a stronger foundation? By recognizing that our boundaries are being breached out here every single day. There's killings, there's all these things going on, these court cases and these racist situations happening. Our community is constantly being targeted, not just by whites, but also by Hispanics, by Asians, by damn near everybody, because we have weak boundaries. We have to strengthen our boundaries by laying a stronger foundation, a foundation built on self-worth, standards, love, self-care, and getting in touch with our own identity of who we are. We have to say who we are and what we're about. This starts with the individual. And most importantly, I think it was Farrakhan who said it, a community can rise no higher than its woman. So ladies, we have to be the ones to lift ourselves. Number 8 is attitudinal, edgy, annoyed, gaslit because you're going against your own values. That's where the angry Black woman things come from, because we're constantly being forced to go against our own values. You know, Black women were some of the more conservative and upstanding women once we got out of slavery. We were the more likely to get married, from my understanding, and you guys please fact check me on this, but it's my understanding that Black people had a higher rate of marriage at a certain point than even whites did, outside of slavery. Stronger family units. This is before the crack era. More likely to be entrepreneurs and business owners before the crack era, before they burned, that's why they were burning down all these places, because we had it going on. It was popping. The community was popping, right? But now we're like attitudinal, we're edgy, we're annoyed, we're gaslit. You know why? Because the things that we're doing are against our core values. We as a people believe in the family. We miss having family. So some of us feel so alienated. We miss having community. We miss being able to support our own businesses and build each other up. We miss that, and we're being forced to go against our own value systems, and that's why we're angry. That's why we're annoyed and we're gaslit. That's because our boundaries are being breached and we're lacking strong, healthy boundaries. We're being disrespected. That's number 9. Black women, it's been said, are some of the most disrespected people. I think Malcolm X said something of that nature. I don't receive that, because personally, you're not going to disrespect me. I will give you guys an example. I was in a store. There's a thrift store where they buy and sell clothes. And when I'm done with certain clothes, I like to sell them on Poshmark or whatever. Whatever doesn't sell, I take it to the other place where they buy it. So I'm standing in there. I have a bag of old clothes, winter clothes or whatever. And I'm looking around and, killing time while I'm waiting for them to call me up to the counter. And I see this guy, he's kind of like coming over near me. And, I'm like, what does he want? Then I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm standing in front of this clothing rack. I'm like, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Were you trying to get here? I'll just move out of your way. He's like, oh, no. Yeah, I was looking at those coats or whatever. And I was like, okay, no problem. So I'm in the mirror, like looking at some stuff, like, oh, look at this shirt, whatever. So I move, and then the guy goes there, and then he kind of quickly comes back over to where I am, because I moved to another area. And then I can see him kind of peering and looking or whatever. And it just got a little bit creepy. So then I wasn't paying him much attention. I went to a completely different area. I look over. I just happen to look up. And he's over near me again, like a clothing rack or two away, and just kind of looking all creepy and stuff. So I just simply went up to him and I said, hi, I see you keep following me around the store and you're staring at me. I was like, why are you doing that? And he was like, what? And I was like, why are you doing that? And he was like, oh no, I was just shopping or whatever. And I said, stop it. And he was like, and I said, stop it. And then I just walked away, went back over to the counter. They had a couple chairs there, sat there, and just kind of looked at him from a distance. And you know what he did? He looked around and got the F out of there, because I made my boundaries clear. You're not going to be creeping around, acting weird around me, following me around the store. I don't have time for that. I have a clear set of boundaries. I have some standards, and I'm letting you know off the top, whatever it is that you have in your mind that you're about to do, it's not going to happen because I'm not having it. And that's how we have to be. I know who I am. I looked good that day. I had on a tight fitted dress. It wasn't like ridiculous tight, but you know, it was form fitting. And he was walking around and just like being creepy about the whole situation. And I had a thought in my mind that this guy was trying to figure out when he could come brush by me so he could like touch me. And it came into my mind, and as soon as it came into my mind, I was like, no. So that's when I went up to him and was like, what are you doing? And I said it with a smile. So just how I said it to you guys, where I was like, I noticed you keep walking around the store and following me. Why are you doing that? That's exactly how I said it. Said it with a smile, and then I let him know, no, stop it. I'm not having it. And he left. That is setting your boundaries. Did I get mad? Did I get loud? Did I be like, what you doing? You better stop following me. I didn't do any of that. I simply let him know, I'm not having it. Don't try me. Okay? My boundaries are in place and I'm not feeling that. I'm not a victim. And that's what I'm giving to you ladies, to let people know. You can say it with love, you can say it with a smile, but you can be very firm when you're saying it and saying, no, stop it. I don't appreciate that. I'm not going to answer the phone when you call me late at night. I'm not going to listen to your problems all day. I'll give you 5 minutes to talk about that situation, and then we're going to move on to something else. Okay? Girl, you know I love you. You know I love you. But yeah, we're just going to do 5 minutes about you and your baby daddy today, all right? All right. And then they'll respect you for that. They'll respect you, they'll honor you, and you will feel good about yourself, because you know what? I felt so good about myself after that incident, because I made sure that I am safe. I made sure that I am respected. And that's something that I'm working on with my therapist and with these different research topics, and I'm bringing it to you ladies. And I hope you appreciate it. We're definitely going to get into part 2 of this, where we're going to go into self-check guidelines. I'm finishing off these last 3 items, right? Number 10 is passive-aggressive behavior. When someone is passive-aggressive, it's usually because they're being forced to do things that they don't want to do. But it's not that they're being forced, it's that they're allowing other people's views and opinions to influence their decisions, because they're not standing strong in who they are and the things that they want. Their standards are lowered because they're allowing other people to have too heavy of an influence. There's nothing wrong with taking in a few ideas and opinions and kind of weighing them out and seeing if anything rings or resonates for you. That's actually very healthy. But to constantly be taking in things and allowing people to sway your opinions, that's a lack of boundaries. And that's when passive-aggressive behavior can come in from people who have learned from a past experience that saying no has negative consequences for them. Number 11 is being clingy. Being clingy, when people are very clingy, it means that they fear rejection, abandonment, isolation. And so they're clinging on to whatever the situation is, whether it's a bad job, a bad neighborhood, a bad look. And by a bad look, I mean, like, you know how they say that's not a good look for you, like that overall energy, how you're carrying yourself. I think as a community right now, we could be clinging on to some negative images and stereotypes of ourselves because we're fearing being rejected by the larger society if we become more proud and empowered and stand firmer in who we are and loving ourselves more as Black women and as a Black community. We don't need to cling on to them. We don't need to cling on to anything other than ourselves. If anything, we need to hold tight to ourselves. Hold tight to who you are, sister. Hold tight to what makes you happy, what brings you joy. Hold tight onto yourself, your health, your wealth, your spiritual, your creative gifts. And the last thing, number 12, is if you're having an identity crisis, which is basically an unclear purpose. Who are you? What do you want to do? You know, how do you, like, what are you going to do with your life? What have you done with your life so far? If you're just going through life, just working, just getting a check, and you're not getting any fulfillment from it, that's a little bit of an identity crisis because you're not living your true purpose, your calling. Unclear purpose due to the influence of others on your sense of self. Worrying over what others will think of you. Sometimes I think as a community of women, we're worried about what other people are going to think about us. We have to live in our truth of who we are as queens, as the brilliant, beautiful, gifted beings we are, Black women in America and across the world. We have to get comfortable with who we are. Not who the larger society says we are, not who our men say we are, not who our kids say we are, but who you say that you are. Live it, own it, love it, breathe it, be it. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to like it. Even those women that are out here being ratchet or whatever like that, live in that, own it, self-check. Make sure, are you loving yourself to the best of your ability and who you are as a ratchet woman? If that works for you, by all means. As long as you don't try to breach my situation, we can live in harmony. That's how we have to be. So now that we have identified the 12 signs of lacking healthy boundaries, we're going to come back next week and we're going to get into self-check guidelines. We're also going to touch back in with Lisa Nichols, how to implement new, healthier boundaries by the Holistic Psychologist on YouTube. And there's another part I had, and we'll touch upon it next week. There was a quote I want to leave you ladies and some gentlemen with. You have to learn how to get up from the table when love is no longer being served. Nina Simone. We have to learn how to get up from the table when love is no longer being served. And from the beautiful and gifted Mindset Evolutionary Lisa Nichols, always remember, we train people how to treat us. And so now it is time to retrain our families, friends, our men, and our members of our community how to treat us. And then we are going to put that out and retrain this society on how to treat us. We are queens, and we are here to reclaim our throne and reclaim and receive what we are owed and what we are due. In order to do that, we must lay our foundation of confidence, self-love, self-care, instill our standards, set our standards as high as we want them to be, and then set up our boundaries and reinforce our healthy, happy boundaries. And know that it is absolutely within our right and within our power to say no when things do not meet our standards, and when individuals and collectives dare to try to breach our boundaries. I love you so much. I thank you so much for being here with me tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to the creators of flynubianqueen.com, for allowing me, Deena Jacobs, your mindset evolutionary, to join you every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Pacific time and 10 p.m. Eastern time. Please hit me up on Facebook, Jakarta Artist, or you can find me on Instagram, Deena Jacobs Flauntz, or Twitter, Deena Jacobs Rants. DEENAJACOBS. And if you enjoy what I'm doing here, please feel free to send me a donation on Cash App. That's Deena Jacobs on Cash App. Any amount is appreciated. I love you so much, and I'm so happy that you're here with me. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope you have a wonderful night. Bye.